Hello there, my name's Scott. Today I'm going to be doing a review on the Penelope Repairable Atomiser, which I received from www.goldengreek.co.uk. Before I start, I must point out I did receive it free of charge for the purpose of conducting a review, but my opinion of the product remained true, honest and accurate as always. Okay, let's go straight ahead, show you in a bit more detail and show you how to get it all set up. Okay, so here we have all the parts that make up the Penelope. Now it doesn't come pre-assembled, so you will need to assemble all this lot yourself. Now it may appear to be a bit of a daunting task because there are lots of sort of little pieces here, but it really is a very simple process and shouldn't take you more than sort of 5 minutes to do really. Okay, so let's not waste any time, let's get straight on with it and show you how to get all this lot assembled. So the first thing I'm going to concentrate on is installing the ceramic into this metal housing. The metal housing is going to have a channel on one side and on the other side a section that has been cut out. All you've got to do is take the ceramic, line it up with the section that's been cut out and then just push it all the way down to the bottom. You're then going to take this very small plastic spacer and just slide it over the threaded end of this piece. And then you're going to insert the threaded end of this piece through the base of the metal housing, and then that way it will be coming through the bottom of the ceramic. You're then going to take this small locking nut and making sure that the two notches are facing upwards, just drop it into the top of the ceramic. Now if you start to twist the shaft, you will find that eventually it will bite against that little locking screw inside there, and once it does you can just sort of tighten it all the way up. And you know, I personally also like to put the screwdriver in between those two slots and just give it a little bit of a extra tightening at the end. So the ceramic should look like that so far. And then to finish off, you can just take this small piece here, place it over the shaft and just screw it all the way down to the end. Now you may find that this piece is pretty stiff to begin with and you might struggle to close it all the way up, but you know, if you just give it a bit of elbow grease, it will eventually loosen up, and then now it's like pretty nice and smooth. And then finally just take this very small O-ring, place it over the shaft and just push it all the way down to the end. Okay, so at this stage we can start to make up the wick and the coil, and the Penelope will come included with a bag of 3mm wick and one of these pre-joined wires. Now this is basically made up of three parts. You have the no resistance wire, the resistance wire and the no resistance wire. Now eventually this will need to be replaced, and you can either carry on buying the pre-joined wires, which are sort of pretty easy to use, or you can go out and buy yourself the no resistance wire and the resistance wire and then join them up yourself. Now I'm not going to go into detail on how to actually do that in this video, but if you check out my review of the Odysseus, then I'll show you how to do all that there. Okay, so let's crack on and show you how to get the wick and the coil all set up. Okay, so I've cut myself off a piece of the 3mm wick and I've got the wire here. Now hopefully you can see that the wire is thicker here, then you have a small sort of very tiny little dot, then you have a thinner wire and then another very small little dot, and then it'll be the thicker wire. And it's the area in between those two tiny little dots which is the resistance wire, and it's only that area that you want to be wrapping around the wick. So literally right here is it's a very small little dot. I'm just holding it in between my finger and thumb, and from there I'm just going to start wrapping the coil around the wick there. And just keep going until you get to the other little small dot there. So hopefully you should have something that looks a little bit like that. And then we're just going to take the coil, drop it into the top of the ceramic and then just push it down, making sure it's sitting nice and flush. Now whilst using your finger to hold the wick and the coil in place, what what we're going to do is take this long wire here on the side which has the ceramic showing, and it's very important that you only do it on this side. And you're going to take this wire and you're basically going to wrap it around this shaft, and then use this nut to sort of tighten it in place. So I'm just going to hold that in place there, tighten that around that gap, all the way back round, so it's like that, and then just tighten it up. Now, rather than using a pair of scissors or cutters to remove this bit of excess wire, if you just apply a bit of tension to it and just give it a bit of a wiggle, eventually it will just snap off nice and clean. Then for the next step, we're just going to push the wick right into the channel, just making sure that you're covering up all of the wire, and then just spin it over and do the same thing on the other side. So hopefully it should look a little bit like that. And you're just going to take this ring and screw it over the top, and just do it up a few turns just to sort of hold everything in place. Okay, so this side here, which has the wire running down the ceramic and then connecting here, is basically going to be acting as your positive connection. And on this side here, where the wire is running down the like the metal shaft, this is going to be the negative. And also you want to make sure that the positive and the negative aren't going to be sort of touching. So what you need to do is cut off this wire right at the edge of this thread here, and also cut off the wick at the same length. So just hold it in place, get a pair of cutters, and just cut it off. And then once again, just make sure you push it all back down into the channels, making sure that the wick is covering the wire. And on the opposite side, we're just going to cut the wick right at the end of that O-ring there. You're then going to take this piece here, which is basically the 510 atomizer connection, and you will need to install this O-ring onto there as well, and then basically just attach it to whatever device you're going to be vaping on. You're then going to take the part you've just made up and slowly start to screw it into position. And basically you want to keep on screwing it until it's getting a little bit of resistance there, and that lets you know that the positive connection there has made contact with the positive of your device. And then just tighten up the ring. Now I like to just loosen it off a little bit, then screw it down a little bit more just to make sure I'm going to get a decent amount of airflow, because you want to have a little gap right at the bottom there. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sort of draw on it basically. So that should be just about spot on. Now before I go any further, I'm just going to check the coil, make sure everything's firing up correctly, check that the resistance is all okay. And before you start to fire it up, you just want to add a bit of juice to the coil just to make sure you're not going to be doing any sort of dry burns. So I've just got some Griswold's GY4 here. Just going to add a few drops to the coil. Now, even though there's quite a few turns of that coil there, I was expecting the resistance to come out sort of pretty high, but these are pre-joined wires. Even though you've got that amount of turns there, it's still coming out around 1.6 ohms, which is pretty good. So I'm just going to put a few drops down the side as well. And when I fire this up, it should hopefully be working, which it is. Lovely. And if I check the resistance, it should say 1.6 or 1.7 at the most. 1.7, so that's pretty good. Right, so this piece here is the juice control and the mouthpiece, and it is a fixed mouthpiece. You won't be able to use your own sort of drip tips with it, unfortunately, but it is actually a very nice mouthpiece to use. You just got to take this and then just screw it onto the threads there. Now hopefully you can see how this is going to actually act as a juice control. Now at the moment you can see some of the wick here, and obviously if I unscrew it you're exposing more of the wick. And if you close it, then you're obviously going to be showing less of the wick, which means less liquid is going to be going up to that heating coil. So for this stage though, you just want to make sure that it's in the closed position, just like that. And then you want to take the stainless steel tank section, slide it over the top and just screw it all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so I've just taken the Penelope off my Pro Vary just so I can get a better shot to explain how you're going to fill this up. Now hopefully you can see that there's sort of 3 slots that have been cut out. And basically you just want to sort of pour your e-liquid down one of the slots and keep on filling until eventually you can see it come above, just above the top of the slots. Then that's it, you know the tank is full. So I'm just going to hold it at a slight angle like this and just basically take my e-liquid and start to fill the tank. So it should be something like that. And then you just need to take this big fat O-ring and just put that into the top cap and just make sure it's pushed all the way down. And this does tend to sort of stay in there all the time now really, it doesn't really need to be removed. And finally just take the top cap, slide it over the top of the mouthpiece all the way down and then very slowly screw it into place. And that's it, you can just attach it to whatever device you're going to be vaping on and you're all ready to go. Okay, so that is the Penelope. Let's go and see what it vapes like. Okay, so that is the Penelope. So what I'll do now then is obviously go ahead and show you in action. So I'm using it on my Mini Pro Vary, which is currently set at 3.8 volts. The coil is reading 1.7 ohms. And I've got the tank filled up with some GY4, which is like Griswold's take on the RY4, which is like a sort of tobacco mixed in with a bit of caramel, and it's a 20 milligram strength. As you can see, like vapor-wise, you know, produces really nice amount of vapour. And you know, that's only at a sort of a pretty sort of standard voltage as well. You know, so if you have got something just like a reverb battery, etc., you know, you are still going to be getting a really nice sort of vapour production out of it. The flavour on it, I'm finding the flavour to be very good. I do find that the first sort of maybe like half hour or so of vaping, it does seem to feel a little bit on the dry side. Because you are getting the flavour, but it's not quite sort of the full flavour. I'm not too sure why that is, because I know that there's plenty of juice being fed up to the coil there. Maybe it just needs a little bit of a sort of a breaking in period. But after that sort of half hour vaping, like the flavour is coming through nice and strong, and you know, really does hit the spot. Throat hit wise, you know, you're getting a very strong throat hit out of it. And I like to vape 18 milligram strength normally, and this is a little bit higher at 20. And I personally find that the higher the nicotine content of the e-liquid, like the stronger or the harsher the throat hit. And 20 milligrams, it's not sort of overly high, but it's not low either, right there sort of pretty much in the middle, but I'm still getting a very strong throat hit. Now, if you are finding that the throat hit is exceptionally strong, then you can sort of make that a little bit weaker by adjusting that centre pin of the actual Penelope. So when you're sort of screwing your ceramic in, just screw it in a little bit further, make the centre pin pop out a little bit more, and that will create a bit more of a gap around there. And I do find that that tends to sort of weaken the throat hit a little bit. But the way I've got it set up here, you know, the throat hit's spot on, just a really nice sort of solid thump in the back of my throat. Now, obviously Odysseus is like, I suppose it's like its big brother, and I've been quite a big fan of the Odysseus. I think there's a slightly newer version out now which has a similar sort of setup to the Penelope with regards to the housing of the ceramic, where it's like ceramic on one side and metal on the other. And I've not tried one of those yet, but comparing it to my original Odysseus, I think I do actually prefer the Penelope. It's just a little bit easier to set up. There's slightly less sort of components there. I much prefer the mouthpiece. This mouthpiece compared to the original Odysseus, excuse me, is a little bit longer, and it's a little bit thinner as well. It just feels a lot nicer to vape on. But somebody did say to me the other day that the new style Odysseus does actually have a thinner and slightly longer mouthpiece as well. But for me personally, it just seems to, I just think it's a bit of a slightly nicer vape, slightly easier to put together. And I think it looks a little bit nicer on your device as well. Like the Odysseus is quite top heavy, you know, you do notice it when you're sort of vaping it on something. Whereas with the Penelope, you've got slightly sort of less materials there, so it's slightly lighter. And it doesn't make anything sort of feel top heavy now. It just, on me, like my Mini Pro Vario, it's just a really nice vape. Build quality, once again, you know, is very nice. You will find though that the threads at first may feel a little bit stiff. You can sort of get away with putting a little smidgen of Vaseline around the threads, and you know, after, you know, once you've undone it and done it up again a few times, then all the threads become really nice and smooth. So don't be sort of too disheartened at first if you are finding they're a little bit sort of tight, because once they've worn in a bit, you know, they really are like as smooth as butter. It would be nice, obviously, if they came like that, but you know, it's just one of those things, I guess. But like I said, now once you've screwed it and unscrewed it a few times, then it really does loosen them up nicely. Overall, it's just a very nice vape. You know, if you can see one, this is one of those things where, you know, they're probably going to be sort of sold out quite quickly, or sold out most of the time. So if you do see one and you're after a nice sort of repairable atomizer, and I really can recommend it. It's very nice. And you've got that nice sort of engraving on the front there, which I didn't really sort of talk about much in the close-up shots. And it is quite rough to the touch. And at first I was a little bit sort of put off by that, because it feels like almost like quite raised. But it's actually very handy, because it does give you something to grip on when you want to sort of start taking it apart, basically. So it's actually, maybe it's meant to be like that, but don't be put off by that, because it is quite beneficial when it comes to sort of setting it up and taking it apart. Not a great deal else I can really sort of tell you about it, but it's just a very nice repairable atomizer. If you fancy trying one out for yourself, go along to www.goldengreek.co.uk. Thank you very much for watching, and also come along and visit my website at www.e-cig-reviews.com. That's e-cig-reviews.com. Cheers guys, happy vaping, see you later.